Almost every organization today says that they make data-based decisions. You speak to a marketer, to a founder, to anyone in the C-suite, they all emphasize how important it is to make data-based decisions because you're making well-informed decisions and not making any guesses. But things are changing very soon because data is drying up. You have regulations like GDPR and CCPA on one hand. Then you have cookies which are drying up. Marketers will know what cookies are, and if you don't know, that I've made an entire podcast about it. I will share its link here. But coming back on track, what do you do in scenarios where you have no data to play around with because you are entering a new market and you don't know what to do? And second is about scenarios where you have some data, but it's not enough data that you can make well-informed decisions. Well, this podcast is going to be addressing these situations as well as much more. Let's dive right into it. Let's start with what I'm trying to say here is a solution. AI can do wonders for you. We have already seen that. But with AI, you can actually make synthetic data. There are organizations that are specializing in synthetic data. We'll talk about it. But synthetic data is almost like making simulations and scenarios just like the real world. Let's imagine that you're playing a cricket match and you have a World Cup match which is coming up in about 10-15 days time and you want to practice hard for it. Obviously, you will not go directly into the match unless you are Cristiano Ronaldo, if you believe so. Even he practices in a simulation. So you practice almost just like you're playing your opposition. What kind of bowlers will they have? What kind of batsmen will they have? What kind of strategy will you put in place that you think is going to make you win that very important match in the World Cup? It's almost like this with synthetic data as well. With synthetic data, you feed in your real data into these models like GAN and VAE. GAN stands for Generative Adversarial Networks and VAE stands for Variational Autoencoders. These models, I'll come to them in a bit, help you mimic real data into almost realistic scenario that helps you make informed decisions. Now coming back to GAN and VAE, these models are used heavily in deepfakes. Obviously, it's not the best example that I'm giving you, but it's used in scenarios where you can change the face of a person in a photograph as an instance. These models, once they have mimicked your real data, you can do a lot of things. Now, one question that may come into your mind is that why not anonymize data that you have? Let's take an example to look at what I really mean here when I talk about anonymized data versus synthetic data. Let's say you have 5 attributes. You have name, phone number, email address, spending, and let's say the 5th one is whether that customer has a Netflix subscription or not. And I'm talking all about this in a scenario where you have customer data in these columns. Now, with anonymized data, you can pseudonymize certain parts of these 5 attributes. You can make them alphanumeric, that means digits and alphabets together, and there's no way that you can know it belongs to a specific individual. But what about Netflix subscription, which probably is going to say yes or no, and maybe your spend, let's say that's about $50. There's a high probability that this data can be compromised. By combining external data, but with synthetic data, things get a bit different. The way synthetic data works is that it works in distributions. So it will not give you the actual spend that you have in your real data. It will give you a distribution. As an instance, if it is $50, then it may say that it's $55. But it brings more variations into your real data that it is very difficult to identify where this data belongs to. It's almost like looking at a photograph from a party where you went. Here, in an anonymized world, you'll actually blur faces of the people in the photograph, but in a synthetic data, it will restage the entire creation. So it'll recreate the party and it'll also stage actors as if instead of those people who are in your real photograph. Therefore, it is very difficult to identify where this data came from. Let's take a real life example to demonstrate this. A popular European telecommunication company worked with MostlyAI. MostlyAI is this company that specializes in synthetic data. I will share their link in the description so you can have a look at it later. While working with MostlyAI, this telecom company, let's call this Super had 2 problems. One, they could not share their internal data with their marketing agency because of the privacy laws, as obvious. Second is their main target audience was young family users. They had very less data about this subset in their entire data set. So Super provided real data to MostlyAI in some way on tunes of this, such as prepaid versus post-plan data, individual plan versus family plan, churn customers versus loyal customers. Based on this real data, MostlyAI was able to produce thousands of similar realistic customers that Super was able to use later on in their decision making. So as an instance, when I was saying that their main subset was young family users, they were able to identify what is this package that they can present to this particular segment that will work the best and will increase the adoption. They were also able to simulate scenarios like, what if we offer 30 GB for €5? What if we top it up with Netflix and offer a new bundle? Or maybe what if we make roaming free? So they were scenarios that they were able to play around with, which with anonymized data is very difficult to do. Almost impossible, if I have to say. So why is synthetic data actually needed today? Well, you have seen so many scenarios, it makes a lot of sense. But let's look at three particular reasons. One, privacy laws. CCP and GDPR, cookies going away, they restrict you to use your data. And it takes time to collate your first party data. If you are like an Amazon, then you already have a lot of data. But even if Amazon, imagine entering a new market altogether, it is very difficult to have a data of that market. The only way to do that is to simulate it. So that's the first need. Second is if you are trying to scale and you're trying to scale quickly. As an instance, in Super's example that I was giving you, if you have a data set that means a lot to you, but you have less in quantity, then with synthetic data, you can actually extrapolate it in such a mass level that it gives you so many scenarios that you can actually make a good decision towards the end. But there are risks and obviously limitations of synthetic data. The first obvious risk of synthetic data is biasness. If your real data has some sort of bias, then your synthetic data is going to just extrapolate that bias and scale it to a level that you can imagine. So you want to make sure when you're feeding in your real data into these models, what sort of data you're presenting, at least you can try the best you know. Second is it'll give you data based on statistical distribution. So it'll not give you the why behind. For why, you'll still have to do certain qualitative research to find out that deep meaning from that consumer subset that you have in front of you. And third risk or limitation is that synthetic data cannot replace your real world data. So it should always be used as a supplement. So in real scenarios, you should be doing your A/B tests or trying different experiments, whereas synthetic data should only be used as a simulation. You're preparing for the World Cup, but you actually have to play the match to be able to say whether you win or lose. Synthetic data cannot predict wins and losses that accurately. So you want to see how you can use synthetic data for your best use. If you're thinking of using synthetic data, then I would say start with a small problem, maybe customer segmentation, or maybe a new pricing strategy, or you're looking at that bundle offer. Try something with one of these issues, see how that data plays for you. And second is, you don't have to really fetch first party data almost the entire time. You can work with these companies like MostlyAI that specialize in synthetic data and see how that works for you. Well, I hope you like this content. Do share it with someone who gets paralyzed thinking about data, because I'm sure they will enjoy listening to it. And do subscribe. I'm your marketing guy, Rachit Kapoor. I will see you soon in the next one.